Hello everybody, this is Jared and today we are playing Car Mechanic Simulator 2021 again. I have a confession to make. I'm not somebody who knows a whole lot about cars. I have a basic idea how they work, but I can't tell you anything about what model came out in what year and what kind of engine. I can't tell you any of those things. But I have been enjoying this game a lot. And one of the things that I've always wanted to do was understand this gearing ratio thing. And lately they've added the drag racing DLC, which I paid for. I kind of liked it. I'm enjoying it. But in order to win at drag racing, you have to understand the gearing. I like drag racing. It's a lot of fun, and also you can make money really fast in this game just by drag racing. It's very quick money. But trying to understand the gearing without being somebody who already knows about it, there's a lot to cover. But if you start going down that rabbit hole, it is deep, man. You don't have to buy the drag racing DLC if you don't want to. You can go to the speed strip. You can race your car yourself. See how fast you can get it up to. See how quickly you can get it up there. But I like the drag racing. So in order to get started with this, the first thing you have to do is put a custom gearbox in your car. Well, here's where you get it from. We'll go to the tablet. We're going to go over here to the gearbox store. We're going to buy a gearbox that fits in our car, and we're going to install it and get the car all set up and ready to go. You're also going to need the dyno room, which is right here. You have to unlock the dyno room. And if you click on the dyno screen, all it's going to do is let you run the dyno test. As far as I can tell, the graphic is the same every time. What changes is these numbers up here. Horsepower and foot-pounds has to do with torque, which is what we're going to talk about next. Then when you go back here, it took me a while to find out. There's the laptop back here, and this is where you go to set up your gearing. Okay? I would like to just talk to you briefly. I am not going to get into a 30-minute discussion about torque and horsepower. Torque is power. It's how hard is your engine turning. For example, if you had a little plastic fan to cool off your chips inside your computer, if it's got very weak torque, you can easily stop it with your finger. It has no torque. If it has a lot of torque, you might cut your finger off trying to stop it with your finger. That's a lot of torque. Horsepower has more to do with speed. It means you're turning around very, very quickly. Well, if the tire spins very quickly, your car is going to go very fast. Tractor trailer has a lot of torque because it's going to pull a very heavy load. Well, the race car wants to go fast. It doesn't care as much about torque, it wants speed. But for reasons of physics, which I'm not going to get into, when the car is just sitting there, it takes a little bit more energy to get it moving than it takes it once it's already rolling. It doesn't take as much energy to keep it rolling or go a little faster than it does when you're starting from a dead stop. So when you're starting at a dead stop, you would like a little more torque just to get it moving. But once you get it moving, you would like to trade that torque in for more speed. The car only has so much energy. You can put it in a torque or you can put it in a speed. It's up to you. That's what gear ratios and changing gears are all about. You can way overcomplicate it if you want to. You can watch YouTube videos for days on that subject. We're not going to do that. What I am going to do is some little demonstrations real quick of what happens. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you what happens when you have a really long gear. Okay, so a long gear means the difference between where you're starting, which is 0 miles an hour, and the end of that gear. Let it set it for about 500 miles an hour. It's a long time between 0 and 500 miles an hour. We say that's a very long gear. It's going to have a lot of torque. I'm going to show you what happens when we have our car set up that way. We're going to go over to the speed track. So here we are at the speed track, and let me just hit the accelerator and show you what happens. It's a very long gear, so we're going to accelerate very slowly. Our top speed is not going up very quickly at all, but let me tell you, if we were pulling a trailer, we could do it now. But this is not going to win us any races, so we don't want to do this. So let's go back to the shop and try something else. So what we're going to do now, we had a very long gear before. Let me show you what happens when we do a very short gear. If we're only going from 0 to 50 instead of 0 to 500, well, that's a very, very short gear. That means the car is going to accelerate very, very quickly. It's going to have a lot of horsepower. It's going to have a lot of speed, but you're going to have two other problems. In fact, I'm going to even make this a faster car yet. I'm going to go all the way down. Yeah, that's about all it's going to give me. I'm going to apply it like that. I'm going to go from 0 to 44 miles an hour very quickly, but some problems are going to happen. Your car is going to start slipping gears, and then we're going to also demonstrate another problem that we're going to have if our gearing is too short. So hang with me, let's go back over to the speed track. Here we are at the speed track. Let's see what happens now. We should get off the line very quickly, which is what we want to do in a drag race. Or any race. We really want to get off that line fast. Let's see what happens. Pay attention to when that gauge on the right gets up to about 5.5. It's going to go up there very quickly, but then we're going to slip gears. You're going to see. Here we go. You see, as soon as I hit the accelerator, already I'm slipping gears. Well, that's no good. Let's go back to the shop, try something else. So here we are again back at the shop. Let's give it a little more speed, shall we? Let's give it... I'm going to put it at about 65. Whatever number you set your gear to here at 65, you're really only going to go to be able about 10 miles an hour below that. So when I get to about 55 miles an hour in the game, my gears are going to start slipping. So just understand that. You don't have to memorize all the miles per hour of all your different gears to switch gears at the right time. You don't have to do that. You're just going to do it by the RPM gauge on the right side of your car. When it gets to about 5 to 5.5, that's when you're going to change gears in the game. Right now we don't have any gears to change to. We're just using first gear. So I'm going to show you now another problem that you can have when you have your gear too short. Let's go back to the speed track. Here we are at the speed track. We're going to demonstrate another problem. Here we go. Hear that? I got the volume turned down a little bit so you guys can hear me talk, but you'll hear the tires squealing. Listen. Okay, that's no good. It means that you're putting so much horsepower and so much torque to the tires. They're going so fast that basically the car is capable of more power than what the tires in the road can handle. If you put too much power, too much speed to the tires, they start to slip. Well, that's just wasted energy, isn't it? You're not going any faster, you're just wasting energy. So the game is try to get the gear so that the top of the gear, the fastest amount of miles per hour that you can go, is short enough that you can accelerate quickly, but not so short that you're slipping gears. Let's go back to the garage and we'll show you what I mean. Okay, so here we are again back at the garage, and we had slipping with our tires. That means that we're trying to be too aggressive with our gearing. Our gearing is too short. We need a little bit longer gear. I have found from experience that about 95 miles an hour works pretty good for this car, because I know from experience that if I go shorter than that I get tire squealing, but if I go faster than that, well, I'm just giving up acceleration. I don't want that. I want fast acceleration. I want to get off that line. First gear is all about getting off the line. Now before we go too far, I want to mention something. The whole idea between the gears and the gear ratios is that your motor turns at a certain speed, and that's not necessarily the tire spinning speed. You can use gears and the gear ratio to change the speed that your tires are going, faster or slower than what your motor's going. That's a whole nother video. There's plenty of them on YouTube already. If you're interested, go check it out. They're pretty cool. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. But what you need to understand is that each one of these gears is an independent tooth ratio of the other gears. If I slide the final ratio slider, okay, only the ratio for this final gear moves, but the top speed of first gear actually moves too. If I had other gears here, when I move the final ratio, they all change. Why? Because the two gears work as a pair. When I say the two gears, I mean the final ratio gear, which is part of your rear end, and that's the same all the time. It doesn't change. The second gear that's in this picture is whatever gear you happen to be in, and you can change what gear you're in. So when you're changing a specific gear, it only changes the ratio of the teeth on that gear. But when you're changing the final ratio, it only changes those teeth, but it changes the top speed of all the other gears. I like to stick mine at about 455. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now let me show you something. You can get to the same place two different ways. I can set this up so that I have a higher final gear ratio and a lower first gear ratio, and I can get to 100 miles an hour. Or I can turn up my final ratio and, well, turn down my final ratio, turn up my first gear ratio, and I can get to the same 100 miles an hour doing it differently. Okay? So you could have this final ratio in a few different places over in this neighborhood and still get your gearing set up. All your ratios would be different, but the end result would be the same. So don't get too worried if you don't do exactly 455 or 5.0 or 432. It doesn't matter that much. Just put it somewhere around this neighborhood and start setting up your car. Now, like I said before, I like it about 95. I like it at about 95 miles an hour. We're going to talk about these other gears in a second. So for now, let's take this to the track. Let's see what happens. Here we are at the track. Now what I want to see is I want this car to accelerate off the line very quickly. Eventually I'm going to get up to the top of the gear and I'm going to stop slipping gears. That's no good, but we're going to talk about it in a minute. Let's just see how fast we can get up to speed off. Getting off the line is what we call that. Drag racers like to get off the line quick. Let's see what happens. Okay, here we go. We're accelerating much faster, but already we're at the end of the gear. So what should we do when we're at the end of the gear? How do we get more miles an hour? I can't win a race going 85 miles an hour. Well, what we do is we add another gear. I'll see you back at the garage. Okay, here we are back at the garage. Now, what can we do? Well, we gotta add another gear because I don't want to win. I can't win this race at 95 miles an hour, man. I'm gonna get off the starting line really fast, and then all the other cars are just gonna laugh and drive right past me. That's no good. I can't do that. So what to do? Well, I'm going to add another gear. I'm going to come over here with second gear. I like to put my gears roughly about 30 miles an hour in between each other. But you can experiment. You might like to try 29 or 28 or 31 or 32. It's just whatever's working for you, man. So let's see. 95, 125 is what I would go for. Let's go ahead. And we're set up 125. Okay, now let's go back to the track. Let's see what happens. Here we are back at the track. Now I'm going to have to change gears manually. That's going to depend on how your game is set up. But that's how drag racing is. You've got to change those gears manually at the right time. That's part of the skill of being a good driver. Now in the real world they have automatic shifting now that's way better than a human being can do. But for the game, we're using the manual shifting. So here we go. When we get to the end of first gear, which is about between 5 and 5.5 on the RPM gauge on the right, we're going to switch gears. Let's see how fast we can go. Here we go. We're taking off, switching gears, and now we're at the top of our second gear. We're slipping gears again, but this time we got up to 120. Well, that's pretty good. 120 is a lot better than 85. But we're not going to race at 125 miles an hour. That's no good. We're going to have to do something else. Let's go back to the shop. Here we are back at the shop. So here we are back at the shop. I bet you can guess what we're going to do. We're going to add another gear. I'm going to go for about another 30 miles an hour more than what I had on second gear. So about 155 miles an hour, which means that about 145 miles an hour I'm going to actually be at the top of my gear, and I'm going to be slipping gears if I don't change gears before then. So let's put the next one after that. About 185. 185. Okay. Whoops. If you slide them too much, you'll mess up the gears before. That's okay though. Well, about 185. Okay, now the last gear, you can add more gears over here on the right side, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, however many you want. I'm going to call this gear number 5. That's our top gear. That's the highest gear that we can go to. I'm going to set it for about 210 miles an hour, which means that in the game I'll really probably only get to about 200. So you'll notice we have a little bit of a pattern here. We have final ratio over here in about the 3/4 neighborhood of the slider. First gear is more about the 1/3 neighborhood of the slider. You can write all these numbers down if you want to. They'll probably work pretty good for you actually. And then right after that, you're going to see this little pattern where the gears are getting tighter and tighter. They're about 30 miles an hour apart from each other. So these are all really short gears. So the first gear is all about getting off the line quick. And then the second gear through, in this case, the fourth gear is all about getting my car accelerating faster and faster, as quick as I can accelerate to my top gear. These gears are all about getting to the top gear as fast as I can without slipping. Once I'm in the top gear, the idea is to go as fast as I can up to my top speed without slipping. That's it. That's the whole game right there. So I'm going to go ahead and save these. We're going to go to the speed track. We're going to see what happens. Okay, here we are at the speed track, and I'm going to change gears every time I get between, say, 5 and 5.5 until I'm in 5th gear. I don't have any more gears after that. Let's just see what happens, shall we? And there we are, nice and smooth. Now I'm in my top gear, and I don't want to exceed my limit of my gears. I actually got it a little bit more. I'm at about 210 miles an hour before I started hitting that gear. So that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this car. It's pretty smooth. We're going to take it over to the drag strip. We're going to see what happens. So here we are. We're going to go to the drag strip. You have to pay money for the drag strip. It's DLC. You know, I used to really hate on DLC. If you're paying $40 an hour for a purple hat for your character, that's just a money grab. I don't like that. But a drag strip, this actually adds new functionality to the game. Like, not just a new weapon or something. It's actually really a whole new part of the game. And programmers need to get paid. They need to eat. I think it was a fair price for a good addition to the game. I like it. This company's not paying me anything to tell you this. I really like the content. I think drag racing is fun. Enough about that. Let's go ahead and drag race and see what happens. So here we are at the drag strip, and let's talk about the different things you can do. The first thing is you can just do a warm-up practice to see if your car is running right. Well, we did that on the speed track anyway. The quick pick, you're not going to race the car that you brought here. You're just going to race a random car. I'm not sure how the gearing that I've set up, if it even affects that or not. I don't know. But I want to race the car that I brought here. So I'm going to do 1 versus 1. And then King of the Sands is a tournament, and you can win money. You win money for beating the other cars. You can also bet on which cars are going to win their races. I'm having a lot of fun making fast money over there. King of the Sands, 10, 20, 30, 40,000 dollars in under an hour, no problem. I love King of the Sands, but right now we're just going to do one-on-one. Now, the 8th mile is all about first gear. It's about getting off the line fast, having your first and second gear set up just right. You don't have to worry about things like 3rd and 4th gear because the race is over as soon as it starts with an 8-mile race. On the opposite end of the spectrum, over here's the 1-mile race, where it's still a drag race. It's very short. It's only a mile, but you have to get up through all your gears very quickly in order to get to that top gear as quick as you can, in order to get your top speed, in order to win that 1 mile. So the other races are in between, right? What you do is start with an 8th mile race, get your gearing set up on your final ratio, your first gear, your second gear. And then when you're winning all your 8th mile races, getting off the line really quick, then you move on to the 1/4 mile race. You add in another gear or two, and you adjust them until you're winning all those races. Then you move up to the 1/2 mile, same thing. 1 mile, same thing. So let's go ahead. Let's race our car against this other guy. Let's see what happens. Now the way these drag races work is that you have to hold down the brake and hit your acceleration. As soon as you start that, that's when the lights are going to start to move. You want to let go of the brake as soon as it turns green, but not a second before. You do a fraction before, it'll disqualify you. That's no good. So it takes a little practice, and then every time you hit between, say, 5 and 5.5 over here on the RPM gauge, you want to switch your gears. So this takes practice. You're going to have to practice doing this, but when you get good at it, you're going to start winning your races. If your gearing is right and you practiced, you're going to win. Here we go. Looking good. I'm looking good. I think I'm going to win. I'm in my top gear now. Let's see what happens. So actually, I could have used another gear there. I could have switched to a 6th gear, maybe even a 7th gear, but you know what? I won my race. I could have went for a 6th gear and maybe a 7th gear. I didn't need it. I won the race, but I should go back and put those in. But for now, you know how to do that. That's the end of this video. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll catch you next time.